The first time I saw the cabins rising behind the treeline, I thought I was imagining things. One week there was nothing but forest bordering my ranch. The next there were piles of lumber, concrete trucks rumbling down the HOA-maintained road, and Karen herself standing in the mud with a hard hat balanced comically on her head like she was the queen of some construction empire. I walked out to the edge of my property, heart pounding, and saw the signs, "Future Community Retreat by approval of HOA," except there had never been an approval. Not from the county, not from zoning, not from anyone. It was just Karen, her bloated sense of authority, and a scheme that smelled like money. By the end of that month, 5 cabins stood where deer once grazed. They weren't modest hunting shacks either. These were luxury rental stone fireplaces, wraparound porches, hot tubs steaming in the autumn chill. And when I confronted Karen about them, she didn't even bother to deny it. She smirked, that same infuriating tilt of her head she used whenever she thought she was invincible. "The board voted," she said sweetly. "These cabins will bring prestige to the community. They'll raise property values. And as president of the HOA, I own the right to manage them." I clenched my jaw, biting back the words burning in my chest. "You don't own the land, Karen. Those trees belong to the county conservation zone. That ridge was never part of the HOA." Her laugh was shrill enough to scare birds from the branches. "Oh please, who's going to stop me? You? Your precious county? By the time they catch on, I'll have bookings lined up through next summer. You'll thank me when the neighborhood is on the map." I walked away that day, fists shaking, but I wasn't defeated. Because unlike Karen, I didn't rely on bluster. I relied on facts. And I had more than she realized. My grandfather's deed didn't just cover my ranch, it extended into a strip of land bordering the very ridge where those cabins now stood. A strip Karen had conveniently ignored because it was tucked inside the conservation zone, protected, unbuildable. She assumed no one cared. But my grandfather had never sold it, never transferred it, never abandoned it. It was still in our family name. And when I dug out the papers from the county clerk's office, my breath caught in my throat. Every nail she had hammered, every cabin she had raised, stood squarely on my land. The next HOA meeting was packed. Karen strutted in wearing pearls and a tailored blazer, announcing grandly that the cabins were officially open for bookings. "We already have 3 bachelorette parties lined up," she bragged. Neighbors clapped politely, some rolling their eyes, others too intimidated to question her. That was when I stood up. "Karen," I said evenly, holding up the deed for everyone to see. "Those cabins are mine." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, phones flashing as people tried to snap pictures of the paper. Karen's face drained of color, then flushed crimson. "Lies," she spat. "Forgery. He's trying to undermine me." But I walked to the center of the room, handing the deed to the secretary. "Check the seal. County record. Signed 1957. My grandfather bought that land outright, and it's never changed hands. You built your little empire on property you don't own." The silence that followed was deafening. The secretary stammered as she read aloud the coordinates, confirming what I already knew. The cabins weren't HOA assets. They weren't Karen's playground. They were mine. Karen shrieked, lunging forward. "You can't do this. I invested HOA funds. This community paid for those cabins. They belong to all of us." But her words had already backfired. If she admitted she used HOA funds, that meant she'd embezzled money for a project built illegally. Heads turned, murmurs rose, and the crowd's energy shifted. Neighbors who had once feared her were suddenly emboldened. "So our dues went into your scam?" one man shouted. "You stole from us?" another cried. Karen flailed, waving her arms, sweat dripping down her temples. That's when the twist hit. From the back of the hall, the county zoning commissioner walked in, flanked by 2 deputies. He carried a folder thick with violations. "Mrs. Green," he said coldly, "we've been reviewing complaints. These structures were erected without permits, without environmental clearance, and on land that doesn't belong to the HOA effective immediately. All 5 cabins are seized. And by law, they revert to the rightful landowner." He turned to me, extending the papers. "Congratulations, Mr. Callahan. They're yours." The crowd erupted again, this time in cheers. Karen staggered back, eyes wild, her voice cracking as she screamed, "No! You can't take this from me. I built them. They're mine. But the deputies moved forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. Ma'am, you're under investigation for misuse of HOA funds and zoning fraud. You'll need to come with us. Her shrieks followed her out of the hall, echoing down the street like the last gasps of a storm that had finally broken. And as the doors closed, the weight lifted. The cabin symbols of her greed now stood as monuments to her downfall. Neighbors clapped me on the back, some hugging me, others laughing in disbelief. You just took down the queen, one man joked. But I shook my head. No, I said quietly. She took down herself. In the days that followed, I walked through the cabins one by one. The cedar walls gleamed, the fireplaces stood tall, the hot tubs bubbled with wasted extravagance. They weren't what I would have built, but they were mine now by law and by legacy. And as I stood on the porch of the highest cabin, gazing out over the ridge my grandfather once hunted, I realized something. Karen had tried to steal, to bully, to dominate. In the end, she had built my inheritance with her own arrogance. The news spread like wildfire. By the following morning, local papers ran headlines about the disgraced HOA president who had built 5 luxury cabins on land that didn't even belong to her. Photos of Karen being escorted out of the meeting hall in handcuffs made the front page. Her mouth twisted mid-scream, pearls askew. Social media had a field day. Hashtags with her name and phrases like Cabin Karen and Luxury Larceny trended for a week straight. Neighbors who once whispered their resentment now openly mocked her, recounting every fine she had handed out, every insult she had slung. But for me, the fallout was more than gossip. Within 48 hours, I found myself in a courtroom as county officials laid out the case. Karen had diverted HOA funds without consent, falsified minutes to pretend there had been a board vote, and cut deals with shady contractors under the table. Worse, she had been collecting booking deposits from unsuspecting renters, pocketing the cash in her personal account. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. This isn't just a zoning violation. This is fraud, embezzlement, and theft. Karen tried every trick in the book. She wailed about persecution, about being a woman leader under attack. She pointed at me across the courtroom, jabbing her finger like a dagger, shouting that I had orchestrated everything out of jealousy. But when the county clerk presented the deed with my grandfather's signature, when the accountant displayed the trail of bank transfers leading straight into Karen's purse, the fight drained out of her face. For the first time, she looked small. The twist came when one of her supposed allies, her own treasurer, flipped under pressure. He admitted she had bullied him into silence, threatened to smear him publicly if he didn't sign off on her phantom budgets. He testified with shaking hands, tears in his eyes, saying he couldn't carry her lies anymore. The room shifted in that moment. Karen wasn't just greedy. She was cruel, manipulative, willing to destroy anyone who got in her way. The judge's ruling was swift. Karen was removed from the HOA permanently, barred from holding any fiduciary role in the state. She faced criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement, with a trial date looming. And as for the cabins, the judge confirmed what the commissioner had said that night. They belonged to me, free and clear. The first weekend after the ruling, I walked those cabins again. This time, I didn't just see what Karen had built, I saw what they could become. I could have rented them out myself, cashed in on her arrogance. But the thought felt hollow. This land carried my grandfather's name, my family's sweat. It deserved better than to be twisted into a monument to greed. So I made a choice. I called the local veterans group, the same one that had helped me when I came home from overseas with more scars than I like to admit. I offered them the cabins as a retreat center, free housing, peaceful woods, a place to heal. Their voices broke with gratitude on the phone. Within weeks, veterans were arriving, unloading gear, smiling in disbelief at the hot tubs and fireplaces Karen had intended for bachelorette parties. The community rallied. Neighbors who once resented the HOA found new pride in helping. They volunteered to repair trails, plant gardens, donate furniture. The cabins transformed before our eyes from symbols of corruption into havens of recovery. Reporters returned, cameras rolling, capturing footage of veterans fishing in the lake, kids roasting marshmallows by fire pits, families laughing on porches that had nearly been stolen. Karen, meanwhile, faced her reckoning. Her trial was broadcast on local TV, And though she tried her old tricks, tears, outrage, claims of being misunderstood, the evidence was undeniable. The booking receipts, the emails, the treasurer's testimony, even her own bragging recorded at HOA meetings. The jury took less than an hour to convict. The sentence: 5 years in state prison. When the verdict was read, I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I just felt the air leave my chest, the storm finally passing. Karen had built her empire on lies, but she had also built me something I never expected: a platform to make real change. Her downfall was bitter, but from it bloomed something good, something lasting. Months later, on the anniversary of the cabin's opening, we held a community barbecue at the retreat. Hundreds came: neighbors, veterans, families. Children ran between the cabins, their laughter echoing in the twilight. The cabins glowed warm with light, every porch alive with conversation. At the center, a wooden sign stood tall, hand-carved by one of the vets: the Green Retreat, ironically named, not to honor Karen, but as a reminder of what happens when greed meets truth. I stood at the edge of the fire pit, listening as a young soldier spoke about how the retreat had given him hope again, how the cabins had become a sanctuary. My throat tightened. I realized then that Karen had lost more than her freedom. She had lost her chance to matter. In trying to glorify herself, she had unwittingly created something that glorified community instead. Looking back now, the story almost feels too poetic to be real. A corrupt HOA president tried to steal land, built luxury cabins on lies, and ended up handing them over to the very people she had scorned. But that's the truth of entitlement: it blinds you until the walls you build collapse on your own head. So I leave you with this question, reader. Was Karen's downfall deserved justice? Or do you believe she could have redeemed herself if she had chosen differently? Share your thoughts, because this isn't just my story, it's a mirror of what happens when arrogance collides with accountability.